It's me, Bill Weiss. I'm at Bill Weiss most places. I realized very late that that's not my email address at work. I'm actually bv@pup.com if you need me there. Anyway, I'm a people manager. I manage 2 SRE teams there. And I really believe, I'm a DevOps believer, as it says. I believe in this and what it can bring to organizations. So I'm here to talk about, well, DevOps. Specifically, the DevOps survey, the State of DevOps survey, which is done every year. And there are 6 reports released. There's another one going on right now. I'll have a link to it at the end. Important to note, this is not a sales pitch. I do work at Puppet. But this is not about any particular software. I'm not going to suggest one. Most of these things can be done with any software out there. If you want to talk afterward about which ones I prefer, sure. Feel free to ask questions as I go along if something comes up. Otherwise, I'm going to propose an open space about this topic so people can discuss it afterward. If there's interest, we'll do that. If not, just come and find me. All right, so and I want to get on some common terminology. I want to get on the same page because DevOps means a lot of things to a lot of people. And there are vendors who say that it is their tool, right? Yeah, just buy our DevOps configuration management thing and then you're DevOpsing. No. Configuration management is an important part of it, but that does not mean you are doing DevOps. It's not continuous integration or continuous delivery. Those things are important. They are very valuable. That doesn't mean you're doing DevOps. If you just have, yes, we have the CI tool, I'm not going to name it. Great, good. It's probably better than not. It's not having a DevOps team. These images are from, as you can see, from the watermark DevOps topologies, which is a very good source of this sort of thing. Some companies say, well, yeah, we want to do DevOps. We've heard it's great. The survey says it's super useful. So we just took this team, and now there's a DevOps team. Now you have another problem. You have 3 problems. Great. It's definitely not, well, we told the ops team that they're now SREs, or they're the DevOps team. You know, Google and Amazon have SREs. They do great, right? Twitter's got SREs. They do a super job. So we're doing DevOps, right? No. SRE and ops are totally different jobs. They're different skill sets. People can transition between them, totally. And it's definitely not this no-ops thing, noops, which I don't hear much about anymore, but if you're like, well, we do DevOps because we just make all the devs do the ops stuff too, 1, that means you need a lot more developers, and 2, it means you've just given up on the concept of subject matter experts. You said, you know what, I don't need anybody who actually knows how servers work or how like bits flow from machine to machine, series of tubes. The devs just do it. There are places that do this successfully, 100%. That is not DevOps. If you just fire all your ops people, please don't as former ops person, that does not make you DevOps and it probably makes, tell me if you're doing that so I can short your stock or something, I don't know. And it's not a thing you can buy. You cannot just go buy DevOps in a box. You cannot pay someone to like make you DevOps. There are companies, I'm super sorry if you work for a vendor and there's a thing out there about buying DevOps from you, sorry. I've seen pitches that just say, yeah, bring us in, we do the DevOps for you so you don't have to worry about it. Boy, it doesn't work like that. You might have consultants who help you figure it out, that's great. You can't just buy it. It's not a thing that just you wave a wand and there, DevOps, great. Scams. This is a term that was coined at DevOps Days Mountain View in 2010 by Patrick Willis and Damon Edwards. There's a great blog post from Patrick Dubois, who's one of the founders of this DevOps Days thing. And then John Willis has a really great blog post on the Chef blog from 2010. I've got links to those in my in the slide at the end. Or Calms, Jess Humble added the L. I thought clams was funnier, but for some reason nobody wanted to do that. I don't know. Those are culture. First thing first, I'm going to borrow from the Agile Manifesto here. Individuals and interactions over process and tools. You have to want to actually get these outcomes and have people bought into doing it, or you're going to have a bad day. I'm going to show you some reasons you might want to do that. Automation. Computers are good at doing the same thing over and over, basically the same way each time. And so you should allow people to not do redundant, boring tasks to 10 machines, 100 machines, 1,000 machines. Let the computers do it and let your people do the hard stuff. Lean, from Jez's edition. This is both in terms of lean software development, which is a talk in and of itself, and kind of the common use of lean of like reduce your overhead, like maybe cut out things that you don't need to do. Metrics or measurement, these are used interchangeably in that acronym. I don't remember which one is Jez's and which one's, anyway. How do you optimize? How do you know if you're doing something better if you don't even know what better looks like or what the current state is? If you want to talk about, does this change deliver any value, was this worth doing, but you have no idea if it gains you value or costs you money in the beginning, how do you know if you're getting better? Then sharing. Everyone involved in your DevOps practice, hopefully it's the whole company, but at least the people you're making do these things, should see the output. If you have metrics about capacity planning, you have how fast you're shipping software, you have customer growth, everybody involved should be able to see that so that you can, so they all know, they're on the same page about what's important. If you are, here's an example from a previous employer that I'm not going to name. The operations team had no idea when we were shipping new features, including features that were going to bring in new customers, or we're going to double how much the big customers use the site. You know where that led? Bad days. Felt bad. Or if it turns out that it takes your ops team, let's say you did not watch the previous talk and you're all on-prem, and it takes you 3 months to buy new storage systems. And your devs don't know that, and so they're writing a thing that's going to be shipped in a month, told customers it's there, that requires another petabyte of storage. That's bad. The concept is moving work to the left. This is the left being the beginning of your development or of your operation, and the right being you're done. The earlier you move any of this work, the DevOps movement, a lot of people started it as, we started at, developers do plan through release, they toss it over the wall to the operators, and the operators have to run the silly thing. And instead, DevOps is get them involved at the beginning. And part of what I'm talking about here is the move toward getting security involved in that. Because your security people can do a great job here. Also, there's a link in the notes. Dr. Dobbs, do you remember the Dr. Dobbs journal? Software development. Dr. Dobbs' journal from 2001 had an article about doing that, like moving your tests earlier in the process. This is not new stuff. So finally, 20 slides in, I get to the report that I promised you I was talking about. State of DevOps report, 2016. The 2017 one is, the survey is still out, and if you're interested in making this data better, you should take it. It's run by folks at Puppet, some people at Chef, and DORA, the DevOps Research and Assessment group. Specifically, these folks in 2016, Alana Brown, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Puppet, Dr. Nicole Forsgren, who is now at DORA full-time. She was at Chef at the time, but now she is working on DORA, the DevOps Research and Assessment thing. Jez Humble, co-founder of DORA, who has written a lot of books about continuous delivery. Continuous delivery is the most important, I'm not going to say the most important one, sorry, Jez. It's a very useful one for this field. Nigel Kirsten from Puppet. He is currently our Chief Technology Strategist. He was our CIO for a while. He's done a bunch of stuff there. And then Gene Kim, who's been involved with DORA for quite a while, since the beginning, and has written books about doing DevOps-y stuff, including the Phoenix Project, which if you haven't read that, it's super. Talk about the history a bit. 2011, State of DevOps report starts. And the question was, what does DevOps look like? DevOps as a movement, there were DevOps days, all of that, but what does it look like in a large enterprise? What does it look like for people who are doing it at a large scale? And at the time, it was very exploratory. There weren't specific questions. It was just, what are people doing out there? A couple years ahead, there's a lot more traction in DevOps. And a lot more companies were saying they were starting to look into it, or they were starting their DevOps practices. 2014, more and more people all the time. But we started seeing, I'm sorry, I missed this earlier. This is all those people's research. I'm presenting on it, but when I say we, I mean the royal we. I don't want to take any credit for this work. Smarter people are doing this thing. We started to see gaps in performance by a number of indicators between companies saying they're doing DevOps and who answer the DevOps-y questions, not just say they're doing it, and companies who aren't. There are distinct clusters of low, medium, and high performers based on a bunch of metrics of performance that map onto if they're doing the DevOps-y things. And there were common tools and practices in those high performers. And so there's this, I find this term kind of embarrassing. I feel like a salesperson when I say it, but like the enterprise DevOps tool chain, which is not software, it's practices that people have. And it's most of the enterprises that were the high performers are doing these things. Continuous delivery, always be shipping. Companies that are performing well are releasing software, for whatever releasing looks like, as quickly as possible. Because the smaller your deltas are between those releases, the easier they are to test, the easier they are to deploy, and the easier it is to back out or to see where changes caused problems. Infrastructure as code. Most of those companies are doing that in some form. This doesn't have to be my product now works on, whatever. Anything you're doing is good, and all of the software in that space is better than not doing it by a lot. Version control. Okay, I'm not going to ask the embarrassing question of how many of you are not using version control. Just kind of give me like a quiet nod if you're doing it. I don't want anybody to be embarrassed and be like, oh, yeah, we're not doing it. There are companies out there that don't have version control. That is, they don't have version control of their code, they don't have version control of their infrastructure as code, and they don't have version control of their artifacts, which means they can't answer, what did the software look like a month ago? What did the software look like a week ago? What did the software look like when this breach happened? Or when our customers, when our conversion rates dropped down? There are companies that don't do this still. And testing. Similarly, I'm not going to ask people to raise their hands. There are really companies in 2017 who are not testing their software, either automatically with some amazing continuous integration system, or even just by having a playbook of what to test. There are people releasing software, they just don't know if it works. Or their testing boils down to, yeah, our tester ran it. If that's you, I'm sorry, if I'm like shaming your company up here because you're not doing that, you can do this. You can make it better. 2015, trends continued, and we saw two new things that matter quite a bit. The middle management, it's not that the middle management is like the thing that came up, but companies that are doing well at this have buy-in at the middle management layer. Companies that said, yes, organizationally, we will do DevOps, the CTO said, thou shalt DevOps, and the middle managers don't care, it doesn't go very well. And companies, and this is a little depressing as someone who likes it from the grassroots side, companies where the developers and operations people wanted to do it, but their management, for some reason the structure of the company didn't let them do it, had a hard time. If the head of development and head of ops disagree on what you should be doing and what your priorities are, it's hard to work together because you're encouraged to not, actually. Lean management. There's a whole talk just in about what this is, but lean management is continuous improvement and being willing to remove process, actually, if it doesn't provide value. This is value stream mapping, which again, I could give a whole talk on that, or someone more qualified than me could give a talk on that, preferably. But if that's a concept you don't know, value stream mapping, super important. 2016, the last released survey. Those trends continue. There are none of these trends I'm talking about that dropped off later, but new ones keep emerging. This is partially because we have more data, and it's because companies have been doing this longer. So companies are trying to move not just the development and testing and operations to the left, they're trying to move everything to the left. They are getting marketing involved. They're getting their security folks involved. They're getting as many people who care about the product involved as early as possible to reduce the cost of making change. Lean product management is happening a lot. I added a couple of links here because it's a very deep topic. In short, your product management team, and this may seem silly, being focused on your customer problems and needs, not just requirements you kind of came up with internally. That sounds pretty straightforward, sounds like what everybody should be doing, right? But it turns out that's new. It's not new. Some companies don't do it. I'm not trying to mock you, if that's your company. And security is finally involved. Companies are saying that they are moving their security teams earlier in the development cycle, and they're getting them involved very early in the design and test of the software, design, implementation, and test. Sorry, I just answered that question. So DevOps comes from this place where people, if you think of the old traditional way to deploy software, your devs write some stuff, your operations team, they huck it over to the operations team. Our operations team says, this is garbage, why can we not run this? And there's animosity. And so DevOps is about moving and working together. What other teams in your company might be considered like blockers? Security, right? A lot of companies, your security folks are the ones who literally say, I know you spent the last 9 months on that, no. Oh, you spent 6 months buying that new HRIS system that's going to hold all of our stuff? Nobody wants to do that. I mean, clearly some people want to do that. But you can make your company better and make your practice better by getting them out of that blocker mindset and into help people make good choices and know about what they're doing. Again, subject matter experts being involved might make your software better. So the security teams need to get closer to the project start. They need to get involved in, when you're writing software in-house, because this isn't just about development, you need to get involved in design and development, right? New features, you need to talk about what are the security needs for this? Oh, you're going to store credit cards. Let's talk about PCI. You're going to store people's health data. Let's talk about what that looks like. Third-party services, when you bring them in, the security teams need to be involved in that purchasing or that, I don't want to say procurement exactly because it sounds like you just have to run credit cards, but they need to be involved in specification there. I've been in a company that literally more than a year of 20 people's work got submarined at the end, at ship time, because they had not covered a regulatory requirement. And it wasn't just, oh, you have to go back and do that. It's like, we can't sell that feature legally. One of us, our CTO, will go to jail. Who wants to do that? Who wants to be the one that says just all of you wasted your entire year? Sorry. Well, so it turns out that not only does that sound miserable, but doing this, doing DevOps, and having these practices of moving security earlier in the cycle actually mean you're more secure. High performers had, this is, Chris got this slide before me, which I was very sad by, 200 times more frequent code deployments, 2,555 times faster lead times, which means like faster time between idea and ship, 24 times faster mean time to recover, 3 times lower change failure rate. And that 2,555 times faster sounds kind of made up, right? It's a very specific number, but like that's not, how is that the case? Well, so here is the clustering. Lead time for changes moves from, in the low performers, 1 to 6 months for a change to go from, we've decided on this change to shipping, to less than an hour. How many of you remember last year there were like OpenSSL patches that were super critical every month, right? Well, if you can't ship, if it takes you 6 months to make a change that is coming every month, you're in bad shape, right? And your time of vulnerability, the time where that problem is available in your infrastructure, is forever, basically. Okay, so some people look at this and they say, well, but that might not be about security. That might be like code changes, right? Those things are the same, I would argue, but okay. Here's a slide. You don't have to read all of it. And let me zoom in on a couple important parts there in case they're hard to read. 50% less time spent in the high-performing group remediating security issues. How many of you have a dedicated security team at your company? Okay, cool. How would you like to double the size of that team without having to hire a bunch of people? Right? These practices mean that you can do twice as much. Or if you don't have a full-time security team, you're a smaller company, and it's somebody's part-time job, oh, look, you gain effectively a full-time person. So not only are they faster, but they're just doing less firefighting. How are they doing it? Integral part of continuous delivery. They are involved early in development, and they're involved often, and they're integrated in there. It's not just, oh, right, when you're working on a new feature, check in on that team. No, it's have them involved in planning, have them involved in review and demos and whatnot. Security reviews, early, very early, that don't slow down your development. Security in the daily developer work, which includes providing input during the design of the application, going to software demos, et cetera. And the security teams have built in automated testing around it. Here's a practical example of that. If you ship code that has to use SSL, and you probably have some requirement that you don't speak some terrible like export-only cipher that's 56-bit or whatever, how many of you actually test to make sure that hasn't gotten turned back on in your software every time? You would be surprised. Some config change, you upgrade some library, and all of a sudden, doing it wrong again without you even knowing. Automated testing helps that. And the security teams need to be building pre-approved, I'm going to read here, pre-approved, easy-to-consume libraries, packages, tool chains, and processes. So when people ask, how do I do an authenticated HTTPS request to an endpoint? The wrong answer is, well, you go read the OpenSSL docs, and you get writing some code. Yeah. No, there needs to be an agreed-upon place to do that and a way to do it, which means that if you need to make changes, there's fewer places to do it. And not all your developers need to have read and understand the OpenSSL docs. Which, by the way, if anybody says they really understand the OpenSSL docs, odds are good they're wrong. Maybe they do, and they're like a superhero, but they're probably wrong. So in general, the thing to do, move all that work to the left. Thank you. These are a coworker of mine insists you have to have a cat image in every talk you do. And I don't have cats, I have dogs. So that's Kiki on the left and Happy on the right. Important links, which I don't expect you to read all of these and remember them. I'll post at least this slide on Twitter or something. Important to note is that the 2017 State of DevOps survey is still running, and so if you're interested in it, you can provide data and help us see what is going on there. You can download the 2016 one and all the previous ones there. I have to say, because somebody complains at me every time I talk about this thing, you do have to fill in a little marketing thing and give them an email address to download that. I'm sorry. If that is a blocker for you, come and talk to me, and I will give you a PDF of the silly thing. Also, our salespeople are super friendly and say hi to them if they call you. And then other things I talked about. That's it. I don't think I have time for questions, but I'll come and do it I'll suggest an open space. If you want to talk about it, come ask there. Thanks.